right, big announcement time here at the Scarlet Faithful podcast. Happy to announce the first ever sponsor of this podcast, and it's an endeavor near and dear to my heart, a cause that I surely support and look forward to helping promote, and that is a partnership with the Rutgers NIL Collective, Knights of the Raritan. Happy to partner with them to promote all the great work that they're doing for Rutgers athletics and their student athletes. I encourage everyone to subscribe to the Knights of the Raritan newsletter for an inside look on all things Rutgers athletics. There will be a link in the bio of all my descriptions for the episodes moving forward, whether it's YouTube, Apple, Spotify, that you can click on. It is a free newsletter that KTR produces on a regular basis. Knights of the Raritan provides a unique way for our Rutgers athletic programs to be successful in the ever-changing NIL environment. Become a member of the Knights of the Raritan for a chance to win giveaways, unique experiences, exclusive event invites, and more. Once again, Knights of the Raritan sponsoring the Scarlet Faithful podcast, have the logo displayed, and really look forward to working with them the next coming months to promote their collective and all the work that they've done for Rutgers student athletes. And I just wanted to discuss it. I've kind of teased this a little bit, but I wanted to go a little bit more in depth in my thoughts right now in regard to NIL and how it impacts Rutgers. And by promoting Knights of the Raritan, I'm not trying to convince anyone that doesn't believe in NIL or doesn't think that student athletes should be paid. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. And I've said this all along throughout the NIL era on this podcast that, no one should feel bad if they cannot contribute financially to Rutgers, whether it's through collectives. And just to be clear, Rutgers athletics themselves cannot pay student athletes. That's why collectives exist and operate the way they do, to support athletic departments and student athletes in making it possible for them to earn money for name, image, and likeness. Without the collective, Knights of the Raritan in this case, Rutgers would be severely disadvantaged in keeping up in the NIL era. And if you don't agree with NIL, that's fine. But if you're unable to contribute to NIL, that's okay too. You could be fan a number of ways, and I've always preached that. But if you do and are capable of helping in terms of financial contributions to student athletes at Rutgers, I strongly encourage you to do so through Knights of the Raritan. They provide opportunities. They're partnering with businesses. They're providing opportunities, meaning events. They do autograph signings. They've done some meet and greets. I know they have more things in the works. They've just recently, promoted the Scarlet Ticket as a promotion. They've been extremely active in the NIL space since it was came of age a couple years ago. And the reality is this: for Rutgers to remain competitive and to continue to rise through the ranks of the Big Ten and nationally in every sport, Rutgers student athletes need NIL support. It is, whether it was intended to be, which necessarily wasn't, but the reality is recruiting, NIL is a huge part of it now, in terms of, obviously, the transfer portal has evolved in the last couple of years simultaneously with NIL, but it's a major factor. It's not a question that comes up. Coaches have been pretty open about discussing that, both in college athletics and also at Rutgers. Rutgers athletics fully endorses Knights of the Raritan as the collective for fans to donate to help contribute to student athletes NIL. It's something that's a reality, that if Rutgers is not competitive in the NIL space, it will be a struggle to remain competitive on the field. And that's just the way it is. Again, it doesn't, and in life, right? Whether you personally agree with something, sometimes it's not that doesn't matter, but that's not going to change how a certain outcome or situation is going to go, right? And in terms of influencing or making a contribution, being a factor with Rutgers athletics, in terms of the NIL space, that's an opportunity for all fans to make an impact. If you go on the Knights of the Raritan website, you can even choose which program you want to contribute to. It could be generally their newsletter. I know they also send member emails a lot. So however you want to become a member, you could contribute. There's a bunch of different levels of contribution that you can give, but every amount matters. Every dollar matters. And again, if you're unable to at this time, that's okay too. I recommend you check out their free newsletter. But from my perspective, and why it was important for me to partner with them, is because to me, obviously it's completely relevant what I do and talking about Rutgers athletics all the time. But supporting student athletes, I've had plenty of student athletes on the podcast before. What they're able to do, the sacrifices they make, and the contributions they make to Rutgers as a community, and just in terms of the pride they bring, alumni, myself included, fan bases, what have you. The more I can help them, the better. So I strongly encourage people to subscribe to the free newsletter. You can find out more about Knights of the Raritan that way. And if you are willing and able to contribute to NIL, please check out Knights of the Raritan, their website, and I'll have that link in the bio or the description of all of my podcast episodes moving forward. But this is where we're at with college athletics right now. And yes, it's an evolving situation. There's, federal legislation being discussed. The NCAA rules are evolving. Whether, the format, I know John Newman, the president of KTR, has spoken publicly about how he believes ultimately NIL is going to be in the hands of the athletic departments and they'll have full control at some point. But until that happens, or if that happens, Knights of the Raritan is extremely important in the NIL space for Rutgers. And, there's some Power 5 or high major schools, athletic programs that have multiple, and Rutgers has other organizations, but Knights of the Raritan is the only true collective for Rutgers athletics. And I really hope that if you've not considered it in the past, again, this is all about helping Rutgers student athletes directly and helping the coaches and the athletic department remain competitive on the field, on the court, because NIL is absolutely a factor in recruiting, in student athletes deciding where they're going to bring their talents and commit their time and their effort. So there's always been ways for fans to contribute, right, to their favorite teams, to their universities. But this is a specific way now in the NIL space to directly contribute to the well-being of a student athlete, to Knights of the Raritan, that can create opportunities for them, that creates events for them to benefit from NIL. And it's a great cause. And I'm just very, very happy. I've respected all the work that they've done throughout the years. And I'm really happy we were able to form this partnership. So I hope that you consider. And obviously, I'm going to have some guests on throughout this partnership from KTR, and just in terms of also the Rutgers athletic department. And I've had plenty of coaches on before, and I will. But everyone I talk to, NIL is just it's the number one priority right now in terms of recruiting and being competitive. And we've seen Rutgers football do a great job in retaining so many starters from last season. KTR is certainly part of that effort. We've seen Rutgers men's basketball. They've done a lot with KTR as well. Then you have the other sports, right? And I think that's also where, every sport is impacted by this. And every sport needs more help when it comes to NIL. And I think you're seeing the reality of that impact, in some of the Olympic sports I think you say, some of the spring sports, they've been challenged to keep up in that space, and I think you're seeing a difference on the field right now. And I want to get into that more and more, but I really think that as a fan, if you want to make a direct impact to Rutgers athletics, the NIL space and donating to Knights of the Raritan is a direct and impactful way to positively contribute. And I hope you consider it. There's plenty of Rutgers news going on. It was confirmed on Wednesday that PJ Hayes, the San Diego 6'6" wing transfer, was on a visit at Rutgers. This is a guy that, shot 40% from three on 188 attempts last season. Was a D2 guy before that. And, analytically checks a lot of boxes in terms of his effective field goal percentage, in terms of his low turnover rate. It's just a very proficient shooter. And I have some nuggets and things to talk about why I think he would be a great fit if he ultimately does commit. But I said last week, I thought, Rutgers really needed another shooter. And, we know they pursued Jadon Jones, who ultimately ended up at Oklahoma, able to get him on campus. The dead period starts next week. So obviously, I talked about earlier in the week about wanting to have the roster set by Memorial Day ultimately, because the team can report on June 15th. So this is great timing and a very intriguing visitor. I really think checks a lot of boxes just in terms of his size, his ability to spot up and knock down threes, his great range. And, I think Rutgers, for this offense that they want to run, to be able to space the floor, you need shooters. And as much as everyone wants a big, and I'm not saying they shouldn't add a big, because they should, but getting a legit 40% three-point shooter that's proven out of the West Coast Conference, which is a good mid-major league, that's an exciting prospect. In terms of Rutgers sports, rowing's going to the Big Ten Championships this weekend. You have track and field getting ready for the NCAAs. Baseball has its last homestand of the season. Ohio State coming in. But as I spoke about yesterday in the episode, a lot of the buzz is building for Rutgers football and Rutgers basketball in the national scene. If you didn't check it out, I talked about how the identities of both of those programs are going to be so critical for next season. But, college athletics is changing every day. If you're on social media, there's just a lot of moving parts to this in terms of reporting that's done by the national media in regard to NIL, in regard to the transfer portal, and just how it's evolving pretty rapidly and with every sport. So we hear about football and basketball the most, but NIL really does make an impact with all the sports. And Rutgers hit a high water mark 2 years ago, and they haven't quite been able to uphold that. And there's lots of factors in that, but I do think NIL is a key part of keeping Rutgers at a certain level and helping to elevate them in terms of bringing improved talent and depth into their programs. And the way to do that is through Knights of the Raritan. And really appreciate everyone's support of myself and the Scarlet Faithful podcast through the years. We're churning away here. We're close to 400 episodes, a ton of followers online. And if you can subscribe to my podcast, whether it's Apple, YouTube, Spotify, however you may, please do so. And, again, I understand donating to NIL. It's not possible for everyone. And I don't want anyone that doesn't want to or cannot at this time to feel bad about that or feel like I'm going to force this down your throats. But I am going to promote Knights of the Raritan in a way that I think is important to get the message out for the Rutgers student athletes. And by the way, just in terms of Rutgers athletics as a whole and how they represent the university, and how so many programs excel academically, socially, in terms of social causes, giving their time to charity work, and just there's for longtime fans like me, there was a time where there were plenty of reasons not to be proud about Rutgers athletics, and I really believe we're out of time, and that doesn't mean there's been unbridled success, but there's been a lot of success lately, more than there was recently. But there's a lot of reasons to be proud about Rutgers athletics at this time. And if there's a way to help them more directly, I'm all for that. And I really appreciate everyone listening and watching this episode. And I will talk to you tomorrow.